And welcome to episode 25 of Orab Sports Complex. Talk sports to me. I'm your host, the sports guru. You are tuned in to our Silver Edition, episode 25. Thank you for tuning in tonight. As you can see, I have my Bengals cup accompanying me, with it being draft week, hoping that we do get a chance to draft Joe Exotic. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Like I say, tonight is episode 25. We've been doing this for several months now, and I really, am excited about the direction that it's going in, and I'm excited about the people that are tuning in. And, I just want to thank everybody, and I'll get more into that in just a little bit. When I first started this podcast, there were a lot of uncertainties on how things would work, how things would go, or even if I would be able to come up with enough material on a weekly, to muster up enough material to consistently maintain a weekly podcast. And at the time, we were recording once a week. It just started out on Sundays. And then as our following grew, it went to Sundays, and then we went to Wednesdays. And then from Wednesdays to Sundays, we got an opportunity through Anchor.fm to be exposed to podcast or Spotify. And then through our opportunity to be exposed to Spotify, we were able to be streamed through other podcast networking sites. The quality has grown of the show. And as we record the shows, we record an average of 5 a week now. And so we've got we're averaging over 1,000 views per episode, and it's being offered in syndication in 8 different podcast sites. So with all that said, I just want to start by saying thank you to all the listeners, and I'd like to thank Anchor.fm and Orab Sports Complex for making Talk Sports to me possible. And last but not least, all the guests, because without our great guests that we've had and that we began to network and build relationships with, this show would not continue to prosper and grow. It's still continuing to grow, which is a lovely thing. Anybody who knows me know that sports has been my life. And so knowing that, for me to be able to take time and talk sports with really good sports people and people who are sports minded, it is a great privilege. Tonight's podcast is brought to you by Anchor.fm and Orab Sports Complex. All episodes can be heard in syndication at the following podcast sites: Anchor.fm, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Breaker Radio, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast. This week's series is titled Through the Eyes of a Champion, and we will be given an inside look at the track of development that it takes to win a championship and what the season looks like throughout the course of it. We've got a star-studded list of guests lined this week, and when I say star-studded, I don't mean I mean household names of people that you see and hear about all the time, read about, see on TV, listen to on the radio, do interviews. Some of our guests have won championships at the high school level, at the college level, and at the pro level. We've got some college coaches who have won championships. This week has a star-studded cast, so you're going to want to tune in every night at 7 o'clock from now until Friday to hear who is on deck. Everybody that we have on deck this week have earned a championship and earned some hardware, and we will hear from players, like I said, and coaches that have won championships on multiple levels, okay? And so this will be maybe our best week so far because we've got so many championship. It's going to be a championship caliber week because we've got so many championship caliber people that will be joining us. Through the Eyes of a Champion is the show title for this week. That's the series. So let's kick off the show. A champion is defined as a person who has defeated or surpassed all rivals in competition. And when you think of the word champion, I'm just going to give you a list of a few names that pop up probably in your mind when you think champion. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Venus and Serena Williams, Richard Petty, Anderson Silva, Floyd Mayweather, Bill Russell, Pele, John Wooden, Phil Jackson, Kobe Bryant, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Walton. These are just a list of a few names that you've heard of that are champions. A championship is a process. And within that process, it takes hard work, dedication, and commitment. And those are all separate entities, but they're all entities in one because that's what makes the process work. And there's a lot of teams that have high caliber players with low caliber character. And as the week goes on and as we get away from some of our players that will be talking and get into some of our coaches that will be talking, I'm going to talk to them about character flaws and how bad character flaws can affect the outcome of a team. In my opinion, the greatest part about being a champion is that there's only one. And so there's not very many things in the world that there's only one of. And for us as individuals, there's only one of us. And that's what makes us special. So when you think championship, correlate the championship to you being special because you are individualized, and think about how that championship individualizes that person or that team. That's what makes a championship so special. And tonight we will ask our guest what that feeling of being the last one feels like. And there are a lot of championships that you win ultimately, but you got to win small championships along the way. A lot of sectional champions, a lot of district champions, a lot of regional champions, but there's only one state champion. There's only one. And we're going to talk to our guest tonight about that feeling of being the last one, because that is an incredible feeling of one in itself, because again, it individualizes you as an athlete or you as a team. One thing that can never be taken away from the athlete is the legacy. And as athletes, you always want to build a legacy with whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're a football player, you want to build a legacy behind your name. You want to build a legacy in your franchise. Basketball player, same. Tennis player, you want to build a legacy behind your name. And for most athletes, not winning a championship can negatively affect your legacy. For a lot of people, if you don't win a championship, your legacy is tainted in a sense. And so winning and team success takes leadership. And we're going to talk a lot about leadership tonight, and as we go on with our series this week, and talk about some of the people that, talk about some of the situations that there is in terms of winning championships and how hard it is to win championships. We're going to get real in depth in the process, because I'm a process guy. With every episode, with every series, you always hear me talk about the process. And so tonight, we're going to talk about winning, and we're going to talk about team success. But in order to win and in order to have great team success, you have to have leadership. You have to have a floor general. You have to have a point guard. And tonight, we've got two of the best guards to ever do it. And I'm going to get some perspective from them in terms of how hard it is to be the point guard, the team captain, the leader on a team that wins a championship. Because when you win a championship, that means you're playing longer than everybody else. And what's the first thing to go when you do something for a long time? Your mental capacity, your mental state. And so it's the job of the leader, the captain, to keep guys engaged during the duration of a championship run. And so the true meaning of leader to me is in our first guest. He's a 2007 Georgetown High School graduate. He's top 5 all-time on Georgetown's scoring list, 1,299 career points, top 5 all-time in assists, District 16 all-district selection 3 times, Player of the Year, SBAAC Player of the Year, Cincinnati Hall of Fame Senior Selection, All SBAAC All-League 4 times, State Tournament MVP, and most importantly, 2007 Ohio High School Athletic Association State Champion, Team Captain, Jay Chadwell. How you doing, Jay?
Hey, Jason, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm thanks for joining us tonight. I just want to talk to you for a bit in terms of the championship. And so I defined championship at the beginning of the show and let the people kind of understand what the true meaning of championship means, because I think a lot of times we get caught up in the not valuing the championship because we live in a society that gets satisfied. So a lot of people get satisfied after winning the sectional championship. And a lot of people get satisfied after winning the district championship. And some people get satisfied after winning the regional championship. They're just happy to be at state. A lot of players and a lot of coaches are just happy with the next level. What is it that it takes to mentally prepare yourself to continue to push through and not get satisfied?
Well, first off, appreciate you having me on and talking about this. I'm always open to talk sports. I think for myself and especially my senior teammates, I had 2 great running mates in Isaiah Felder and Corey Kidwell, who were just, a dream to play my career with. I think, realistically, what fed us goes back to the previous year, our junior year. We were 22-2 that year. I mean, still a great team. And anybody who knows anything about Georgetown basketball, they've never won a district championship before that or since that 07 year. And we were in a position to win in 06, my junior year, at UD Arena. I mean, I know the Southwest UD Arena districts, how fun it is.
Right.
And we were up on a team named Houston, which if anybody else knows anything about Georgetown basketball, that's the same Houston team that beat Brian Grant.
In 90, yes.
Brian Grant in the 90s,
yeah,
or the 1990s season. So we're sitting there in a position to win and a close game, but one that we were in control of the whole game. And a guy by the name of Brad Feathers, I'll never forget his name, hits a 30-foot jumper to beat us that junior season. And you talk about devastation. I'm crying to coach. My teammates are crying and whatnot. But, when the dust settles, how much fuel that adds for the next season is unbelievable. I mean, I had the biggest summer I'd ever had in basketball that summer, and just getting ready to prepare to, win a district championship. That was always the goal. The next year was to win a district championship. And the 3 of us were coming back, and Mark Gray obviously played a huge part of that season as well, helping me with point guard duties and the guard duties. But then we also added, a freshman that I'll put up against anybody, and my brother, Jess, who is just a big-time player as a freshman, ready to go. And it just seems like things with the fuel that we had and the team that we had, it just came complete that, we obviously went 28-0 that year. We beat a lot of good teams, got a lot of teams' best shots that prepared us for the postseason run. And then once we won the district championship, it's not like we were satisfied, but that was our goal. And then who's sitting there in the regional semis? The Houston themselves. So
right.
Then we have that motivation to go. So then we play really, really well, beat them by 10 or so. And who's sitting on the regional finals with the number 1 team in the state. And then, from the goal of district championship, which was what motivated us all summer, to getting into that regional final and everybody telling us we don't have a shot, really just added more fuel to the fire. And that's really where, it took off really to tremendously great things and pushing us to that state championship.
Something that I know about that group of kids is you guys had been doing it together for a long time. And you added some pieces and you lost some pieces. I know my little cousin Booter played with you guys when you were younger. Uh-huh. And he transferred out to play football. That was his thing, and it worked out for him. 4 years of college football at Ohio Wesleyan. And so it worked out good for everybody involved. But talk to us for a minute about the process and about the buy-in, because I know your dad had a big, significant part in the early stages of that, and talk to us about the process.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of people think you win a state championship just that year, and that's not the way it goes. It just takes so many years of dedication to doing what you're doing. And again, luckily I had teammates who were that wanted to dedicate themselves to the game as much as I did, in Isaiah and Corey. And then we look back at our elementary years. We had some teammates as well that were on that team, and one of the unsung heroes of that state championship team that I played with throughout my career was Clinton Cowhall, and how pivotal he was to that state championship team. He didn't play big time minutes in high school at the varsity level, but you talk about somebody who just was a team first guy that's so rare, that he just wanted the team to succeed so bad, whether that meant him practicing his butt off to prepare us, or him being the loudest cheer on the bench, or whatever it might be, of having that mentality. Who, as a coach now, I look at him as somebody who's really taught me the values of being a good teammate. And, all four of us were, along with three others, were all started back in second grade with my dad. And he's taken us to Cincinnati to play at 5 o'clock in the morning. We're waking up to get to a 7 o'clock game down in Cincinnati to play the Mollers of the world and the St. X's of the world. And as we went on throughout our career, yes, we won at the SBC level, but we won a lot down in the Cincinnati level as well. And what my dad did at that time was taught us a valuable lesson of, you can either win locally or you can win big time. And you have to play big time teams to be used to them, because I'm probably arrogant enough to say we would win the state championship 10 out of 10 times. But if Dad didn't take us down to Cincinnati to see those big time players and those big time teams, then when you get to a new Knoxville, you're going to be shell shocked, because you've never played anybody that good. But because we were established to playing teams that good, based on our younger years and the dedications throughout those younger years to play teams like that, it just made that transition a lot easier when we saw New Knoxville and Harvest Prep in the big time state games.
Something that I and I'm not going to, and like, I have a great relationship with your dad. I initially met your dad. Of course, him and my uncle were friends for years, played softball together. But when Brian was in high school, your dad would have basketball camps at Georgetown. And I remember going to those camps, and I remember, like, the first year I didn't get any awards, like for the skill competitions. And so, like, it drove me crazy that I didn't get any awards at the skill competitions, because I could play. I was a decent player as a kid, but from a skill standpoint, I didn't, I wasn't one of the better kids. And so I went home and did every one of those drills day in and day out, time and time again, until I perfected the spider, until I perfected the figure eight, until I perfected the X out layups, until I perfected the free throw competition. And so the next year I come back, I win all the awards. And what your dad taught me was not the fact that it was about today. It was about, you may suffer or struggle today, to get what you want tomorrow. And that goes with and what you're saying with him taking you down the road to play the much better teams, the Mollers of the world and the St. X's of the world. Booter told me a story one time, and I was going through some stuff, like some anxiety stuff, and I was talking to Booter, and I was like, I've started meditating. And he was like, yeah, I'll be meditating too. He was like, I've been doing that since I was a kid. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, Coach Chadwell used to make us meditate in practice. And he was like, he would make us sit down and think, tell us, think about making your free throws, think about not missing your box out. And then the last thing he would say is, now I want you to think about cutting the net down. And like, it's funny, but it's not funny because it happened, and it took a lot from Jimmy had a lot to do with it, and Coach Underwood had a lot to do with it, and Jared had a lot to do with it, and your fan base had a lot to do with it. But that started when you guys were kids, and so the relationships that you guys built, were those bonds ever in jeopardy of being broken during your tournament runs, or did you guys stay together and stay the course?
It's funny with that. When we were going through, obviously I had a lot of points, and if you put 1299 in a lot of schools in a lot of seasons, that particular season, that's going to be the high for that career. Mm-hmm. But Isaiah had more points than I did, and Corey Kidwell scored. He was the the one that did all the dirty work that never got any recognition for it, and he scored 700, 800 points. And it's funny that when you're going through that, and again, Coach Underwood did such a phenomenal job with us of keeping us to the grind, keeping us to team, and making sure our sights were set on what they should be. But you figure a team that's 22-2 the previous year and 28-0 that year, that everything's all hunky dory, and we had bickering inside the locker room or inside practices, but I think any team, or I call it family, any family does. But there were more distractions outside of our team that had no idea what was going on inside of our team than there ever was inside. So, one of the things Coach Underwood had taught me that I've carried on to my coaching is outside perspectives are going to say what they want. It's important for the people that are, winning games with you and losing games with you, running 17s with you and celebrating with you. Those are the opinions that matter. And as long as you're all on the same page, despite the little bickering that it just happens, that everything else just kind of takes care of itself.
Did you guys take and not particularly in your 22-2 season, because that season was you came up short in the district, but in your 28-0 season, was your mentality every game just fight for it all because we want? I mean, you don't have to be 28-0 to win a state championship, and so when you are 28-0 and you win a state championship, that makes it more special. And so along that run, did you feel that you had a chance to be the state champion, or were you just really trying to knock down one game at a time?
It's as a senior, you kind of, and you as a coach and you as a player, basketball is such a grind. I mean, it's just a long season. And as a senior, you kind of have this understanding that you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself because it's such a long season, and in high school sports, if you overlook somebody, that's where you have your downfall. So you got to have it one game at a time, in my opinion. Make sure you're taking care of who's in front of you first. But then you had on the opposite side that young dumb freshman who was just full of energy, and talking about our state championship years later. I asked Jess, I said, when did you think that we were good enough to win state? And he said, the summer before the season, we were at a team camp and we were playing and we beat some good team. I don't even remember. I'm sure he could tell you. And he said, I knew right then and there we could win a state championship. So I think, based on perspective, it's how you're comfortable looking at things. I like looking at things one game at a time and making sure we didn't sleep on any opponents and made sure we respected them enough to know that they could beat us and that they wanted to beat us. But still, people on your team are going to have aspirations of winning a state championship like Jess did. And I think that's okay, just as long as you're comfortable in doing it your own way.
What was the push as the team captain and as the leader, when you're pushing your teammates, and especially in this area, because let's face it, you're at Georgetown. They never had a district championship before, and that's what you're playing for. You're playing to make history. You're playing for a banner. So what is the push like when you're pushing guys? Because, at some point, for you were lucky because there's 3 people that I know never need pushed. And we will agree on this, and anybody who knows these 3 people know this. But when it comes to the game of basketball, Jimmy Young, Jerry Underwood, and Jarrett Young don't need pushed. They're the pushers. But sometimes coaches start to sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. We're guilty of that. And as the team captain, how do you level out allowing them to push, being able to tell them to stop pushing, and you being able to push the right way or the from a player perspective way? How were you able to do that? Because it's different. It's done differently when you're a champion.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things that happened for us that year. One, again, going back to that loss the previous year in Houston, when you think you can't run another 17 or you think you're spent during a game and you can't go the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, you remember that Houston game and how bad and how long that hurt and not wanting that feeling ever again. And that was a big motivation to me, to talking about my teammates of, remember where we were last year. We didn't want to do that again. That's not the pain that we want to feel again. And then, the leading by example is huge, making sure you're playing hard all the time. And again, I look at, you just have different roles on the team. And Clinton Calhoun was just huge in that. This dude, he just had a motor that never stopped. And, of course, he was a state participant in track and cross country, so I'm sure that's a little bit where his motor came from. But he would just push us and push us, to go harder, to run that little extra bit, to do that one more drill, to play that one more play, because he was willing to do that for somebody who wasn't getting recognition at all. And I think that's huge, that you have a team that's willing to accept their roles for what they are, and leaders like me, Isaiah, Corey, and Clinton were on pushing us to that extra point because we didn't want to feel that pain that we felt the previous year again.
Something that doesn't happen around here, it's starting to be more prevalent, but it didn't used to be this way. But kids transferring in and a lot of times when you see teams at the state tournament anymore, and even back when you guys won the state, there's always the kid that transferred in from somewhere else to be the extra component, to that championship success. And it was genuinely, and that's why I wanted you on, because people don't understand, like, it was genuinely part of your story, you guys' story, for even just to be 3 years younger, to be attached to his big brother's hip when it came to basketball, and being told can't play right now. And, he's just always around you guys. And something that I think doesn't resonate enough during a championship season is how much community it brings. And I had never seen Georgetown so close, the community, as they were during that time. How did that make you feel to know that you guys were bringing together the community? And it wasn't just Georgetown. all of Ripley was there. You know, there was a lot of Ripley there watching you guys play that night. And we may have been jealous because we wanted to win one before you guys did, but the reality is we were there and we were pulling for you. So what is that feeling to have the community on your back and to know that what your work is not going unnoticed and people are supporting you in such a big way?
Yeah, you talk about how seeing us at 28-0 was seeing us as a finished product, of the years of dedication that we put in. And it's nice to be recognized. Obviously, you and I both know that's not why you do it, but it is nice to be recognized. And the cool thing about it, you go back to Georgetown and you talk to people about that night. For some people, that's one of the top moments of their life. Definitely for me, obviously playing in it, but people that were fans, that's one of the top moments of their life. One of the coolest things that happened after the state championship night was when we were driving home, and we played the I guess it would be the 6:30 game right before the D1 game at 8:15, I believe, or whatever it is, and we're driving home. It's midnight, and we're passing through Fayetteville, and you have those two gas stations that are catty corner right at that stoplight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And there's probably 250 people there welcoming us back into Brown County, just celebrating the championship with us. And Fayetteville is a team that's, not in our conference that we might play at the Pepsi Classic or the Brown County Classic. We might play them there, might not. So a team that we might not play is celebrating our win as we come back into town. And then when we get back and we actually stopped the Croswell bus in the middle of Fayetteville and got off and, celebrated with them a little bit. They had signs made out welcoming us back and everything. And then when we get back to Georgetown, it's 1:00 in the morning and the parking lot's full. There's more people in that parking lot that night than I've ever seen at any of our home games, which was, just phenomenal. And we did something with a victory parade every time we won. So we won sectional tournaments. We had a victory parade, and, we had a cop car leading us back into town with like 2 or 3 cars behind us. And then we districts, it's a little bit bigger of a deal because we've never done it. So we have 2 cop cars and an ambulance and like 5 cars. And then it just slowly, gradually builds and builds and builds to the point where, a sheriff is escorting us as soon as we get into the panhandle of Brown County, all the way down to Georgetown. And there's sheriffs and cops and fire trucks and ambulance. And just, that's when you look at all that and the big parade and the people at Fayetteville, you understand how big of a deal it is to other people besides just the people on the team, because that's something that's big in their life as well, that they'll remember as for the rest of their life. So being a part of the community that celebrated what we did, because the kids on the team were the kids of that community, is something I'll never forget.
Couple more questions, Jay, if that's okay. But when you looking back, it's been 13 years now. That's a long time.
Yeah.
It seems like it was just yesterday. It's been 13 years now. It feels like it was just yesterday to me. Every year when I'm in Columbus at the state tournament, that 6:30 game, I remember where I was sitting that night when you guys beat Harvest Prep. And I remember certain things about that game that became where that team, the reality of how good that team was, became transparent to me on that night. So I'll take you back to the second or third game of your senior year. You're at Ripley. You're down 8 or 9, whatever it was, 7, 2 minutes left. Ripley goes 4 corners a little too early. They let you guys rest. They didn't try to put you away. You come back and you beat them. You very easily could have lost that game that night. And I don't necessarily think that loss changes the fact whether you win a state championship or not, but I think what that night did for me was seeing that game and seeing the game at Harvest Prep. It solidified the fact that night at Ripley, guys were just playing positions. Like, guys were just playing their positions. And after that close call, after I watched you guys play the remainder of the season, guys began to play basketball. And in the Harvest Prep game, I think what threw them off was there were some possessions where Ike was bringing the ball up the court, because they're doubling you, they're running people at you. And so you just clear it out and let Ike beat his man and get up the court, and then you come get it, and then you set up your offense. And so that team was full of basketball players, and the mentality was different, and it was special to have something like that come from Brown County. As it's been 13 years, the feeling that night as a 17-year-old kid, and then the feeling 13 years later as a head coach, what does it mean to you today?
It still means a lot, and it's never not going to mean a lot. I think that if you ask anybody on that team how much that means to them, everybody will say in some circumstance that of how much it meant to them. And it should. It was again, it wasn't just a 1-year process. It was years of dedication to the sport, and having something that you can talk about forever that you were rewarded with. And I think that's what everybody will say. As I've transitioned into coaching and became a head coach and been around different programs, it's becoming more apparent to me because, again, as a player, I understood how special it was and how fun it was. And, playing for great coaches like Coach Underwood, who was just, had you ready to run through a wall at any given moment. And, Jimmy Young, still to this day, I'll put him up as one of the greatest X's and O's basketball minds I've ever been around and probably ever walked this earth. I mean, I think he was at that level of X's and O's and understanding the game. I mean, we understood that, but as a coach, you start to realize how hard that really is to do what we did. Because, as a head coach, you think you can have every detail planned for a game and every opponent scouted to the T, and you know what they're going to do on every single possession, and you still find a way to lose the game. And that's just part of it sometimes. So, as a coach, you look back at it and at a team that went undefeated and won a state championship, you start to really put together how incredibly tough that was for us to do, and thank all the people that put you in that position to do it, starting with, my dad and my 6 teammates that we started with back in 2nd grade.
Doug Williams says, state tournaments in small towns are legendary. That's what's great about small town schools and sports. SBAC, SHAC, SOC, full of small towns that love their sports. And something about a lot of the schools in the 3 conferences that he mentioned, there's no football. So basketball is king, in a lot of those places. And in football, it's even harder because everybody doesn't get a chance to play in the playoffs like basketball. And, one thing that I just want to do now that I've never done probably, with you, we've talked and we're buds. We played softball, BRB dog, all that stuff. But, something I've never told you is that I appreciate the maturity that you brought to that team, because there were some people that were immature in a sense. Jay just being a freshman, he was very mature for a freshman, but he's still a freshman. And some of your upperclassmen, were not making some of the best choices and that type of thing. But your leadership in terms of your level of maturity at that time to be able to make that push and keep the focus and keep the dream alive and keep the pressure on and keep everyone engaged and make it special. There's a lot of really good basketball players. There was a lot of good players on that team. But you're one of the best that I've ever seen in doing all the things that I just mentioned and in keeping things together. And I appreciate that in you, man. So, like a state championship's not won by one person. It took everybody on your roster. It took every coach on your staff. It took your dad. It took your community, and it took everyone else who had their hand in it. But at the end of the day, there always has to be that person that is the calm before the storm, or that's the cooler and can neutralize situations. Because I know Coach Underwood, he's as cool as a cucumber. But I've seen him a wreck before too, and Jimmy and Jared both stayed a wreck. So there had to be somebody that was the calm before the storm, or the cooler in the heated situation, and that was you. And so congratulations on your state championship. It will mean more to you in 20 and 13 more years than it does today. And when your kids are old enough to be able to experience, to play in a tournament and not win a championship in a tournament that's for a weekend, that's when they'll appreciate what dad has done. And so those days are coming, man. Congratulations on the engagement and the upcoming wedding and everything. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out, and I will soon be in touch if I need some softball players.
I appreciate it, Jace. I appreciate you having me on, and keep doing your thing, man. It's going really well for you, and I'm very happy for you.
Thanks, Jay.
All right.
Jay Chadwell, 2007 state champion, team captain at Georgetown High School. Like I said, he was everything that embodies a champion. Like everything that embodies champion is what he was, in terms of, being able to keep his teammates leveled out, being able to keep the coaches leveled, being able to help the coaches not lose their cool and go to a bad place with the team. And there always has to be those guys on the team. And he is that guy. And when you think about other people that have won championships at the professional level, at the college level, at the high school level, if you think about other people or other teams that have won championships, there's always got to be that guy. And that guy doesn't necessarily have to be the best player on the team all the time. But that guy has to be able to neutralize compromised situations. And normally you find that in really good point guards. And you just don't understand the significance of winning a championship until you've ever went on a championship run, and until you've ever been let down, and until you've ever felt the pain of not being able to win the championship or not being able to advance. And the worst thing about losing a championship to me was that the season was ending. Because now you don't get to go on a pursuit of your next championship until the next season. The season's over now. And that's what causes some friction and some tension with teams, because guys point fingers and point the blame and that type of thing, and they're just not able to mentally maintain themselves through a loss. And oftentimes what happens after that loss is enough to break down a team or break down a franchise if you're not strong and built tough together. And that Georgetown team that was 22-2, that could have easily happened when they lost to Houston the year before. And it just didn't. And so, it goes without being said that guys who are winners, guys who are champions, are built just a little bit differently than everyone else. And that's why guys who win typically win at every level. There's always someone at the next level that's as good or better than them. But they have an innate ability to do something more than just play the game of basketball that allows them to be a champion. And we got a really special guest for you on Thursday. And our Thursday guest won a state championship at the high school level. He won a FIBA World Championship for the 19 USA team. He won a college national championship. He won a championship in Germany back-to-back years in the Premier League. And now, here, the team he's playing on in the NBA is building toward being a championship caliber team. And I wouldn't say, like, in high school, he was the best player on his team. But the FIBA team, he probably wasn't the best player on his team. And I say that with all due respect, but there were great players on that team. You know, the college team he was on, there were guys that got drafted higher than him, but he's always the glue, and he's always the person that keeps it together. And championship teams have to have guys that can keep it together. So, you know, I don't know how you guys feel about, like, the process. And we talked about that. We talk about that process on this show all the time because Jay talked about it just now. The process doesn't start when you get to the first game of your senior year. You know, the process starts, you know, when you're in the second, third, fourth grade, you know, and so, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, you have to understand your goals. You have to understand the process. You have to understand the logistics of being a good teammate. And you have to understand the logistics of being coachable, even when, and here's another mark of a true champion. A true champion that has a championship mentality has to be coachable, even when what is being coached isn't being coached to him. And so, for all you coaches out there that are listening to this, and for all you players that are listening to this, coaches know where I'm coming from. Players, you will need to learn where I'm coming from. If you're a winner and your coach senses you're a winner and you have championship mentality and a championship mind state, you are always going to be the guy that takes the brunt of the punishment from your coach, because he knows that in order for him to get his point across to 12 other guys or 10 or 11 other guys, it's going to take you getting your butt ripped for him to get his point across, because that's what champions do. They get knocked down and they get back up. That's the mark of every great champion is to get back up. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, but do you get back up? And that's like a championship trait that, like, a lot of kids now that are winners, that are considered winners, or that people think have the potential to be winners, that's a trait that is going away some, is that trait of getting back up when being knocked down. So this episode 25, it is the Silver Edition, is brought to you by Mount Orab Sports Complex and Anchor.fm. We have our next guest. Our next guest is, let me go through his accolades here. Our next guest is a fifth region player of the year, all-state in Kentucky, all-tournament team KHSAA, Mr. Basketball candidate, Kentucky All-Star, played in the Indiana and Ohio Kentucky All-Star game. In college, he's a two-time All-American, all-time assist leader, passing OG George Baker, national all-tournament team, scored a total of 1,344 points, had 673 career assists, 549 rebounds, multiple time all-conference, and first team all-conference twice, won 3 conference championships in 4 years, and last but not least, the title of the show, he is a national champion. Please help me welcome ELJAY Cowherd. ELJAY, what's up, dog?
What's going on, big guy?
Oh, man, I'm just talking to my listeners about championships, and I want to talk to you about, one thing I just talked about at length was that, like, if you look at guys that are winners, they win at every level, and you've won at every level. You've played in your high school state tournament, played in the national tournament in college, won the national tournament last year, was 30-2 this year, probably was on deck to win the national tournament again this year. Tell us about what it is that makes a champion, which is what I would consider you a champion. What innate traits do you have?
Well, when you talk about championships, I think the first thing that you talk about is grit. It's I think, like, on every single team that I've ever won with, between high school, even going back to middle school, guys were just tough, man. Guys were just ready to win and ready to sacrifice whatever they had to do. I know at Georgetown we had a bunch of D1 transfers that were immediately ready to help, but they didn't always get that chance right off the bat. Because it was hard, you know what I'm saying? And guys sacrificed shots, guys sacrificed their own individual accolades for what would have, came out on top as a ring, and what did come out on top last season as a ring. Of course, the coronavirus prohibited everyone from getting their opportunity to win it, but that would have came out as a ring for us, I believe, this year too.
What is it you say? Coronavirus, flu virus, Miley Cyrus? Is that what you say?
Yeah, coronavirus, flu virus, Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus. Whatever it is, let's work. I saw you out working outside in your neighborhood, practicing social distancing with one of your younger family members and one of your homeboys, and you had a tire and a trash can and medicine balls all lined up out on the sidewalk, and you had stations set up. And the very first thing that popped up in my mind was, when I saw that, I said, that's the separation between ELJAY Cowherd and every other point guard in America, every other NAIA point guard in America. That's why his team is so good. That's why he can lead that group of men at Georgetown, because he's probably the first person in the gym, last person to leave. First person in the weight room, last person to leave. First person to the supper table, last person to leave. So you are the true definition of leader, and point guard and captain. How special was that championship run?
Hold on. Keep playing. The championship run was special, and I'll tell you why. It's because whenever you have the opportunity to win something, you don't normally win them all. But we had the regular season, we won that. We had the Mid-South Conference tournament, we won that. We had the national tournament, and we won that too. So, like, anything that you can win, we won it. And it's I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to play beside some of those guys. Like Troy Stewart was really good. Joe Burton transferred from Oklahoma State. He came from Valpo as well. It was so good to play against and with some of those guys. Don Reed came from North Carolina Central. He won a conference tournament at the Division I level as well. So just to be playing against some of those guys, that's what really made it special to me, was the personnel. But on top of that, it was the fact that we won everything we could win.
Couple more questions. How important are your relationships, the locker room relationships, staying together on campus, staying together off campus, making sure that you're building the bond? How important is that toward a championship team? Because we hear people talk about family. How important is it to build that bond?
The bond with your teammates is very, very important. It's to me, honestly, I think it should be first. Because you're going to war with these guys. You know what I mean? You're going to war with these guys, and especially when you got the #1 title, a lot of people, they're targeting you, so to speak. They've been marked that game. Somebody's #1, you marked that game a long time ago. And a lot of times you get there and people are. One time Pikeville gave away a car because Georgetown was #1. Pikeville gave away a car to get people to come. So when those are the circumstances, you have to have trust in your guys and make sure that everybody's on the same page. That is just the biggest thing. Like I know every night that I was going to be on the same page as everybody else on my team, Conway, Coffee, whoever it may have been, Joe Burton, whoever else would have been there. I believe, with my heart and soul that they had my back every way I could have went. Right or wrong, they had my back. But the referees, whoever it was, and that's the biggest thing when you're going to war like that, man. And at a high level, especially, you just make sure that everybody's on the same page and got each other's back.
One thing I just noticed, you played 134 career games. So that means you played through injury, you played through sickness, you played through family adversity. 134 games in 4 years is a lot of basketball games. I mean, that's a lot of basketball games, and that's a lot of tournament runs. For the younger kids that are listening, how do you stay up on top of physically and mentally being tuned in to being ready for war and ready for practice every single day?
The biggest thing is durability, man. You have to treat your body like you love it. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest deal is making sure that your durability is up to par. I played in every single game in my career other than one. So, it was special, and everybody doesn't get that blessing. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest thing. Just treating your body like it's a contract, taking the best efforts that you can push towards, eating healthy, resistance bands, all of it helps your ligaments, shoulders, especially. Resistance bands are really good for your shoulders, and mine were healthy the whole time.
So two more questions, and I'll let you go because I know for everybody out there listening, LJ is currently working. He's got an essential job. Not going to get into what it is, but he has an essential job, and he's working currently. So he took some time out to talk with us tonight. So 1,344 points, 673 assists, and 549 rebounds in 134 games, and a national championship, and finished your last year #1 in the country. You are the epitome of what a winner and a champion is built like or looks like. If there was any advice, and I know you just talked about taking care of your body, but if there was any advice that you could give to the youngsters that aspire to play at the college level and aspire to get a free education and aspire to have an opportunity to be a pro, you're going to be a pro. You just recently signed with your agent. As soon as this coronavirus, flu virus, and Miley Cyrus is over, you'll get back to business in terms of finding your contract. But what is the advice that you'll give to the young kids that want to be next level athletes, and not just want to be next level athletes, but that want to be successful and win and pursue championships?
The biggest thing is building good habits, man. It takes an adult 21 days to build a habit, which means it would take anybody during their adolescence about 26, 27 days. If you build good habits, you have a leg up for those who do not. Guys that shoot the ball the same way every time, or guys that wake up at 8 a.m. and their body's used to it, or whatever it is that somebody's asking of you. The best people that are gonna have the best chance at going pro are the people who can do what somebody is asking of them all the time. And when that opportunity meets preparation, I advise all young kids to be prepared every single time that opportunity comes. Be prepared for what it's prepared for. And that's doing what a coach can ask of you, what an agent can ask of you, what a contractor or an organization, a club can ask of you. If you're able to fulfill what somebody else is asking you to do, you will then be in the position to make yourself successful.
Great answer. Lamont Johnson just tagged top performer at Maysville Classic. So in order to be the top performer at that tournament, it takes a body of work over the course of the weekend. I remember watching you and Chris and Lil Troy and Conway get off down there. Y'all came to Ripley, to my hometown, and got down before. So that's one thing about your group of guys. You play basketball outside of basketball. You travel anywhere to get it in, and y'all never ducked any rec. And so I hate that the coronavirus stopped your opportunity from pursuing back-to-back national championships, because to win one is very hard. But I really feel like, honestly, you guys were on track for 2 in a row, and that got cut short. But I wish you the best of luck. Before we get off here, is there anybody you want to shout out?
As far as shout outs go, just shout out to my mom, shout out to my coaching staff, and anybody who recruited me over the process, NBA G League, anybody who has been essential in what I believe that I've got to do here. I appreciate all of y'all, and that's my biggest thing.
LJ Coward, folks, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah. So that was LJ Coward, national champion at the college level. Last year at Georgetown College, they were 30-2 this year, and he was going to. They were on track to win another national championship. His teammate Chris Coffey, who we may have on later in the week if I can reach out and touch him, was NAIA Player of the Year this year. And so tomorrow we got a very special guest, a person that I've always looked up to, a person that I think is one of the greatest basketball coaches, basketball minds that I've ever met. Kelly Wells won a state championship at Mason County in 2003, went back to the final game in 2004, coached the likes of Chris Lofton, Darius Miller, Trevor Setti, Jarrett Litzinger, Dustin Grutza. He's coached multiple D1 athletes. He got a great opportunity at Pikeville College in 2006 or 2007. He took that opportunity, and he ultimately went on to win a national championship there. Kelly Wells will be with us tomorrow. Very, very, very good basketball coach, but more than a basketball coach, he is a great person, and he is very, very humbled. And so I'm excited about getting the chance to sit down and sit here and talk to him tomorrow. But as for tonight, episode 25, the silver edition is done for today, and we are going to sign out. So keep your hands washed. Take care of your family. Eat well. I'm out.